My name is Katarzyna Wojtkiewicz. I'm teaching here at university. And today I'm going to present to you the fascinating subject of management of the modern organization. I will use the samples taken from my life professional experience, and I will refer to the academic subjects that I teach here, so the strategic management and advocacy and government relations. As the lecture is targeting with the students, so population who is probably interested in having the later on engagement in the business and looking for the business and job opportunities. And as I, by coincidence, had the unique opportunity to invite for today's lecture the CEO of the leading company at the market, we agreed that to make the lecture interesting and also to address the topic properly, it will have a kind of interview or kind of a conversation, rather, to explain more details about the strategic management. You are very welcome.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, I am not a student, but I am hopefully open to ask some questions and maybe dig a little deeper in the subject, as I'm an employer and interested in seeking of good candidates for my developing and expanding company. So I'm very interested in hearing what you're going to present today.
Thank you very much for attending. To increase convenience in what I would like to present today, I have to say a few words about the context, how this knowledge that I'm sharing grown in myself. And obviously the academic context is very much important, but what is practically important for the students here is that I gained this knowledge since 30 years. I started my first job in business. And in fact, everything which I talk here is based on the cases, based on the practice which I experienced myself. So, surprisingly, as I'm going to talk a lot about technologies and a lot about the business processes, surprisingly, my background is are legal sciences. I'm a lawyer. And on the other hand, I am a manager who got the doctorate degree in the management of the IT technology. So this is a merge which is not very common, but that worked perfectly during my business engagements, because everything that we are talking about today is information. It's information in the digitized way, and the bridge between the legal sciences and technologies is exactly information. So the one has to understand the legal framework to design or to execute the business process, to define the semantics which are used in the computers, in the technologies, then to build appropriate relation between those components, which is called IT architecture, and then to develop the technical solution, so some algorithm, some code, which works basing on those in this architecture. The context, talking in the practical terms, is really very broad, as the projects that I'm referring to today are in the public government institutions and also in the public business, majority of those being the finance institutions. A lot of here is related to the digitalization of those institutions. So the management seen through the digitalization is one of the topics that I would like to share today. But before I will go to the cases and before I present the specific cases, I would like to ask our guests of of what he's looking for. Why you are coming here to the university and you are looking for some students to recruit them possibly in the future. So what is your interest?
Okay, let me be very specific. As my company is now in a very dynamic period of growth and expansion, I have decided to look for some fresh labor force into the organization. And normally we would use the standard way of trying to get help from recruitment agencies, headhunters, and stuff like that. But this time we thought maybe we should go one level below and try to get people that are just graduating in specific subjects, in specific areas from our, nice Warsaw universities. So, and to be honest, I need some proof. I need some knowledge of what you are teaching. So actually, after what you just said in the introduction, my first question would be, what are you actually teaching here at the SWPS University? And what is my guarantee that the people I will source from this academic organization will prove to be good candidates and will help me to solve my expansion and management problems?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. This is really interesting approach. And what I already highlighted is that the real difference between this university and the teaching the other places is that we all are practitioners, and including myself, including the topic that I'm going to present today. And when I'm talking about IT architecture, when I'm talking about the IT management, when I'm talking about the establishing of the managing of the public authority, I'm talking about my real own experience. And I combine the literature and the development in academic science with the real cases, the projects which are being managed in those different organizations. What I observed, I usually say when I'm presenting some topic, I do some funny exercise. So I try to collect, during the last days, I try to collect the statistics from the conferences to find out what was the winning word used by the conference participants. And you know what is funny is that in 2008, 2010, especially in the financial market, when we had the crisis, everybody knew the Lehman Brothers case and the following developments. The winning word in a lot of events, like the conferences, was the crisis. It was financial crisis, it was developing crisis, a lot of terms about crisis. However, it started to change, and as of 2010, 2011, I observed that there is a competitor to the crisis, which is change, and the change making, and the change being, and predicting change. So in fact, the uncertainty which we observe in our business became the leading factor in all the sciences focused on management. Because everybody who's managing the corporation is considering how to win the competition. And to do that, the CEO or the president of a management board needs to understand and predict how the market will develop, what is the dynamic in the financial markets, for example, what will the competitors do. And what is really fascinating is that in all those meetings, but also in a bilateral conversation, what I heard was, okay, I cannot predict. I don't know. It will change. This is for sure. But I cannot predict if this will develop in this direction, in that direction. Okay, I can have a probability, which is also an important word. I can have a probability that it will develop in this direction, but I cannot be sure. And also that I don't know what my competitors will do. I don't know what will be the political environment, how this will change. So if I will be in position to run my business in the same way that I did before, or if I have to adapt the change. So the change is one of the paradigm of a successful manager. The manager, who is manager? Manager is somebody who is designing the reality of his corporation, who sees all his actors, so employees or partners, who are doing and contributing to the business, and who is who tries to be better than his competitors in achieving the outcome, whatever it is. It could be the profit, it could be some good for the public good, but it's always about this. How to see this environment of the organization in this way that this organization will be adaptable to the environment, and these days to be adaptable to the ongoing change of this environment. So this is the one thing. But there is also another thing which is very important for management sciences and to give any advice to the person like you. This is the thinking or digitization of the everything that we are doing. We cannot imagine anything today ongoing without the technology. The communication is supported by technology. What we are doing here is also, we are having presentation on the screen. We are having technology of a communication before preparing to this event. And in fact, the organization, as I presented before, is around the information. Information is in the heart of the organization. And who is better settling and managing this information, this one is winning. And if we combine the two aspects, so if we combine the change, so ongoing change, plus the ongoing modern changing technologies, we have really the mixture of a very rapid situation which has to be addressed by the effective, successful manager. And this is not an easy exercise because it requires from the manager to have the helicopter view on his organization, so to see this as the whole organism, but at the same way to see each detail, which is a digit, which is a byte of information, which goes through this organization to produce or to have an effect in the outcome of his business processes. So going to the real topic, so what is the competitive advantage, how we can manage the corporation in the way which will be really, which will guarantee the success, is that we understand and we adapt to those two factors, to the change and to the modern technologies. The case which should illustrate how we can do that is the case of the European Insurance and Occupational Pensions Authority, located in Frankfurt am Main. This is the one of the authorities established after the crisis of 2008. So in 2008, not only the investors, but also the politicians and the governors, supervisors, they observed that there is not enough information, or even in different words, that there is too much information, too many digits, too many bytes of information, which should be well interpreted for the supervisory needs. And in fact, nobody knew what was the Lehman Brothers case about. If it was about the mortgage, okay, but who owns this investment paper? If the bank is this bank, or maybe it's mother of this bank, or maybe some other institution in the network. And in fact, they realized that it's not, that the missing factor is to understand all the relations between the subjects on the market to really observe the dynamics which are ongoing and how they can impact the other companies. So if we have the Lehman Brothers case, how it will impact the company in Congo. Okay? Because not understanding this from the helicopter view, but basing on the very detailed information from those companies, you cannot prevent that the crisis will develop. So that was the reason why the three agencies were established. It was ABA, so European Banking Authority, located in London. It was a European market agency located in Paris, and insurance agency located in Frankfurt am Main. And the task that we faced, it was 2010, so the regulation, the parliamentaries in the European Parliament, they issued a legislative act. Everything was easy because the money was there, the legislation was there. Very easy, just start monitoring the market to avoid, to prevent that such a crisis will develop in the future in the similar way. And that task, we realized, we meaning the team who was establishing this agency, so who was tasked to manage the agency from the start to grow it and to get the result, we realized that in fact the success will be based on those two factors. So we have to be in position to analyze the situation, but not according to a well-defined scenario that we could know, because we didn't know. Okay, Lehman Brothers was in 2008, but in 2012 it could be completely different scenario. So we could not really predict and put in a computer algorithm which will be addressing some specific scenario in, I don't know, in automotive business. So in fact, we realized that we have to adapt, to create, to establish authority which will be adaptable to the change first. And secondly, we have to develop the technology supporting this concept, which also will support adequately this changing environment. So we will be in position in 2 years' time, analyze any scenario using the data that we will collect, but we will have to be in position also to structure this data in this way that any use case could be supported by this. So, okay, how we started our work. There are some academic teaching about the establishing of a new organization, but also how the new organization works. What you see at the screen is it looks like a house, and it's correctly representing the household, because you see here the fundaments, which are ready technology, ready products, ready outcomes of this organization. You see the roof, which is about the human beings, which is about the organization in this soft human being sense. So there are some teams, there are some reporting lines, there are some units, divisions, everything that composes the human beings to work for the organization. On the left side, so those are like a room, it's a data architecture. And data architecture is, in fact, you could think about the house having electricity, and this is in the electric system, there is data flowing all the time, and sometimes you switch off, and this is the component of the data architecture. And there is a technological architecture, which is nothing else like a hardware, like a machine, like a system in the hard sense of this. But what is the most important in this house is its heart. And the heart is the business processes, because they connect everything. So when you are the public authority or private company, you have some information, data, which is incoming to you. You have some task to do because you are producer of food, or you are producer of information or assessment of the risk on the financial market, right, like this one. And you have some output. So you have some results, products of what you are doing. And this is always the same. So it doesn't matter what company we are talking about, what manager we are talking about. It's always about incoming information, doing something with this, like cooking something, and then having the result at the end. So establishing this is not, of course, the easy task, especially when you have to manage the new organization, because how you should know how to do that? How to you have to cook some very sophisticated dish, but you have no idea about the recipe. You only could have some impact on the ingredients because it's data which you call from the market participants, from the insurance companies in this case. But at the end, you have to get some very well-defined, tasty dish of the soup of tomato soup. Okay, but very specific because nobody yet had this developed it before. And this the case here. The case began because what we had to do, it was interviewing each and one expert who was already employed in the organization. And of course, the organization was tasked with many kind of dishes using this nomenclature. And we had to understand in very deep detail how this recipe of the product should be collected and then mixed to give the outcome that we desire. And that was, in fact, when we are talking about the establishing of the authority, we think, okay, the most time-consuming stage is to build, to code the system, to, I don't know, to rent the house, to do this kind of stuff, but not at all. To have the proper design, so to have the proper understanding how to connect this income with the output that the company has to produce is the most important stage in the management. You have to put attention to thinking and to really elaborating in a very, very detailed way each information digit which comes in and each product that you should produce. Why you should do that? Because just imagine that you have using this cooking example, just imagine that your task was to produce soup, some nice meat, dessert, and what else? Something more. So that was your target. And you had cook 1, cook 2, cook 3, all those people were employed in this company to prepare their products, their dishes. And you could do the purchase of all the ingredients that you should use for producing. And now imagine, being a manager, that each of them, so each cook thinks, okay, I would like to use some apples, some meat, and makes the list. Another says, okay, I would use some also flour, some, I don't know, pears and some other stuff, okay? And everybody makes some list, and they are not connecting, they are not communicating between themselves. So in fact, what you do, you have 3 drivers who have to go to the marketplace. You have to buy 3 times all those ingredients. One is buying the cheapest for the cheapest price. Another is not so lucky and buying for the more expensive price. Also, one is not precise enough, so the driver is mixing what was the purpose of buying. And at the end, you are multiplying the task several times, not achieving the good result. So this is on the income of the information to the organization. So what do you have to do? You have to really avoid the duplication of those processes, redundancy, we say in the management, of those processes, to have just one process of data or ingredients collection. Just once. But to do this once, you have to be very specific about the semantics. You cannot use the semantics which will be not understood in the different ways, because then you are not properly satisfying the cook. You have to be very specific about the quantitative, about the measures, how much you need, when, so timing. You need to make really very detailed and time-consuming design to understand how, in the best way, to collect the data, to collect the ingredients for your recipe. Then you need to think about the end. So what exactly you need to produce? Okay, for dish, everybody can imagine what. But here it's not so easy. Here you have the AOPA regulation. So in fact, the act, the LL.M Act, which has a lot of provisions, all those written in PDF text, and it's not sharp. So once the legislator uses the group as a financial group as having only the companies who are connected in the one country. Another times in the same regulation, he's using the group in the context of the cross-border groups. So in fact, the semantics matters. And if you are tasked by this regulation, so the provision reads that you have to supervise dynamics of the insurance groups, you need to be specific what you exactly need to do. For that, you have to get some more explanation from the European Commission, from the lawyers who are interpreting this act. So again, here you have the time-consuming exercise to define those products sharply, and also to avoid duplications and to have the products well categorized, the timing of the issuance also confirmed. So we are on the outside side. But now this is the most challenging thing. You have to connect income with the output. And this is exactly the business process. So this expert whom you interviewed, who defined, okay, this is the data which I need, this is the product that I will be tasked to produce, this man has now to say how you will do that. So in fact, how this algorithm, how many companies, which companies' data, how to be connected, in which time to be, which portion of this data to be analyzed, assessed, if any macro data is needed, if any micro data from other sectors is needed. All this kind of stuff needs to be considered by the person who has an expertise in this product, in this business process, and he has to define this. So in this case, in case of AOPA, this project and engaging everybody working, there was 50 people at the time, used 6 months, where at the end of this period, we had the ready design of the corporation. So we had the ready design, input, business process, output. And again, we are talking about the managing. So what we need the decision. We need the decision of the authorities who are giving the funding money for each country gives the money to then build basing on this, to invest money, to build technologies, to employ more people, having this evidence of the business process at the table. And here some politics come because some countries does not know to share too many detailed data of their corporation. They say, okay, I'm authority who is supervising firms in my country. What for? I should exchange this information on the European level to have the what I will have out of this. So what is also very important, and this case also proved it very much, was that we always have to think what is the specific outcome, so the specific product which will be valid for each of those parties who are specifically giving money and who are engaged in the decision making. And the justification has to be sound, because they will not agree for spending millions of euros to invest in something which they think gives only some theoretical advantage of the theoretical European Union if they do not see their own country-based interest in this development. So that was time-consuming exercise, but what we teach here at this university is how to do that, how to manage such a project, how to connect all those 50 people, how to get the outcome in the desired way, and how to get also this decision of the decision makers at the end to agree for what the design says. At the slide here, you have very complicated roadmap. So it's not necessary to read it carefully. But what the highlight here is that whatever you do, you have to have some concept and you need to understand what you want to change. Okay, when we are talking about the startup, you need to change everything almost. So you are creating the new entity. But usually the projects, and also our guest was asking about the expansion of his business. And to do that properly, you have to analyze your strategy first and to think how you can improve your business without investing any euro or any Polish zlotys in your case, probably. Why you need to do that? Because the majority of optimization in the modern companies can be achieved even without touching of the technologies. It seems to be like a contradictory to what I said before, that the technologies do matter. Yes, they do, but they do matter only at the very end. First is this thinking. So first, you have to think, okay, this is the today, we call it as is business. This is what we are doing today. This is our to-be desired outcome in 5 years. And this is again this project, let's say, of the analysis, which should explore which business process and how you should change to achieve this outcome. And in many consultancy projects that I was engaged, that was really not so difficult to define some improvements only by changing of the business processes. So, for example, doing this task here and not there, or doing this task before or after. Very simple improvements which were getting the big outcome from the change. So this is the first thing. Of course, there are some changes well thought through, which require to have the technological support. And here is again one of the decisions that we made in AOPA case, so how to implement those technologies. So we had already all the designs, business processes, they were to be flexible, they were to be supported by technologies, and we face another question. Okay, now you need to build the house, now you need to buy the technology, and you have some choices. So in the past days, usually the most rational choice was to buy the technology, one. So going to one supplier who would know your business, who would know already, who would already have developed the system that fits majority of the firms of the similar nature at the market. And you are buying this, this supports well your business processes, and okay, so expenses done once, then it's only maintenance, that's it. What happened in the past days? That was this change ongoing, okay? When you bought the out-of-the-box system, which was perfect yesterday, and tomorrow you wanted to configure something in the system, then you had to send the change request to this company, which was very expensive because that was the real business of your supplier. And in additionally, it was time-consuming. Additionally, you could not really get what you wanted in a time that you should have it done. So technology addressed this the issue. The out-of-the-box solutions, they today exist as well, but they are very specialized in doing some very small portion of supporting very small portion of your business process. So you have the financing system, you have the HR system, you have your core business system, you have the a lot of very specialized dedicated systems for supporting your business processes. And what technology gives us today is so-called open IT architecture, which is nothing else like an open solution for integrating all those out-of-the-box functions into your business process. Those are the systems which are built basing on the business process design. So sometimes even the suppliers allow you to give them your business process described in Visio or in any simple tool that we know. And they implement this business process by connecting the support to this business process by connecting different functions through so-called service bus. So this is the IT service bus of technology, which is specialized in just calling and pushing the information, the data from those systems which are working on the specific functions. And those days, when we are implementing such a complicated system like this one in AOPA, we decided, okay, let's do for the best companies, best suppliers who are doing this portion of the business, let's select another one from another provider and be all the time required to be open for the change. So that all the time the supplier will, in fact, the only requirement for the supplier was to have the function that we can name today, that we can document today, and to be open for any changes in this. So the requirements were quite, let's say, easy. And the integration then was the clue of having that system working properly. And this is all about this complicated slide, which is presented here. I'm also coming till the end, but I wanted also to give you some evidence about how it worked. Okay. Here you can see the visualization of those business processes, and this is not the most complicated slide because this is the high-level description of the business processes in the authority, in the organization. Okay. Then, when we did this description, now I'm going to the core business only because HR, financial, this everybody knows more or less. Now I'm zooming in to the core business. Now, in the one process which was on the high level, I'm digging in to find out the management and monitoring of the market's developments, which was exactly the one process which is in the focus in my case, which was not enough, of course. So another process which was even more described in more detail when we are analyzing risk, and this one was specifically designed to analyze the stress test scenario. So a stress test scenario in a financial market is something that you think about, I don't know, change of the currency, rapid, and you need to populate this fact to the companies that you are monitoring. So how it will impact on their portfolio. Or like it with Lehman Brothers, okay, some kind of the financial instruments are changing the asset value. They are not expensive anymore. How this fact will be populated from the issuer who is issuing those financial instruments till the companies who are having this instrument in their portfolios. So that theoretically, it looked like this. And the factual case was not predictable, really, because the factual case was what happened once on the 21st of June 2016, I believe, and will materialize just now in form of Brexit. So there was a voting, and financial market did not predict that this voting will decide in the direction that it decided. So in fact, there were several scenarios that could happen impacting the companies which were monitored by this authority. like British pound currency depreciating or increasing, like some of the financial instruments issued by those British companies changing their values. All this kind of stuff could have potentially an impact on the well-being of the companies which were to be monitored to avoid that the wrong scenario will materialize. So, for example, they will have no enough money to pay back the insurance claims to the citizens. And who could predict this scenario? Who could predict that the systems will have to analyze such a scenario which is strictly of a political nature? So that by coincidence, we had the day that the voting, it was Sunday or Sunday and Saturday, the voting results were known. And on Monday, we had the meeting of our decision makers. And everybody was very interested. Okay, so what? Okay, the result we know already. So what? So how our companies, our meaning, okay, in our country, in another country, how the companies will be affected by this case. And thanks to the system, and now we are talking about the technologies because they were designed, they were implemented, we could interpret the data which we already had in this system because we collected it before. So how many assets of this company, other company, this insurance company has in their portfolio. So we could just push the button and analyze the scenario in the system, how the change of the one factor in on those portfolio what would the impact will be. Okay? We presented the results at this managerial meeting, and of course that allowed the national supervisory authorities to spread this information to their companies, to focus on the given companies with some supporting actions, to help them to not to be impacted to the extent or to change some regulatory requirements to allow them to adapt to the change adequately. And of course, that was very appreciated by everybody that the system allowed for having such a clarity. Then the next case was the voting in America when the new president was elected. So that was another case, also unpredictable for some people could. And many other scenarios also of a nature, so some crisis in terms of the fire, of the things which are important for the insurance companies and how then it develops into another companies. All this kind of stuff which nobody could predict in the moment of establishing of authority were ready, just easily obtaining the result, the impact, and designing the preventive actions. And this is, in my understanding, this main message that I would like to pass through this presentation is that effective manager has to be the person who is understanding the fact or accepting the fact that the change is happening and that he doesn't know and will never know, never be in position to predict how the change will develop. And secondly, to manage the corporation through the information that is being settled, which is being managed in this corporation. So those two factors, I personally believe, are making the good manager in a technical sense. In a soft sense, this is another lecture, and this is at our psychology faculty, because the one thing is to manage this hard thing, another is how to do that with the people. Because everything which was done here was done by the people, was done by some managers who were in position to make the teams to be so enthusiastic about the way that he proposed, to be in position to implement it timely, to get the effect in the given moment. And one last thing that I would like to highlight here, I made once the research on the success factor of the projects in technology. Some people call it IT projects. That was the group searched was over 50,000. It was in America, in Europe, in Asia. So it was really big group, statistically speaking. And the purpose was to analyze where in the project the failure happens. And the success of the project was defined as having the scope of the project delivered, having that delivered for the money, for the resources agreed at the beginning, and having it delivered in the time that was originally defined for this project. So 3 factors. And you know what the result of this, I will not go with in any detail, but the main failures were about the designing of the business requirements. So in fact, analyzing of those business processes. But why the issue was there? And there we are coming to the point of the psychological sciences. The issue was with the first communication. So the people could not communicate between themselves in that way that would give the correct business requirements for the system. Secondly, it was about the collaboration, so that the people could not collaborate in that way that would give the proper result. And the third one was the defense in front of the preventing of the status quo. So that was there was the 3 factors. So in fact, all the 3 factors which impacted the success in the IT project's implementation was of a human nature rather than of a technical problems. However, the respondents were rather, when they were asked what happened wrongly, they said, oh, the technology, we didn't know the technology changed, we didn't know how it worked, we couldn't define the requirements because of technology. Some, the word of technology like being used as an excuse for any failure. But in fact, in a deep analysis of those cases, it was really 50-something% of the failures were caused by those human beings related or psychologically related causes. And I wanted to share this experience, also to encourage you to look for how this hard management is working, because it's very needed for the people. You are representing majority here, the psychological sciences, I believe. I don't know about you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can say that 100% of students here are representing the social, psychological studies. And this is very important, and it's important for the both direction. It's important in the direction that you should familiarize yourself with how this hard management is working, what is important, but also the students who are doing the management and then are advising the CAO who is sitting here, they should be aware of the reasons which are behind the success and the successful advice. And I believe that the people here teaching in this university, they merge the 2 perspectives. They merge the perspective of the soft psychological sciences with this hard science, which is required to manage the corporation as well. The thing is, if you have any questions. Yeah.
As a psychology student here, I would like to say that psychology is in every kind of area, but in the business management also. As I know, many psychology students are, after graduating, they can become HR member, like they recruit people, they also in the negotiation part, even if you are, for example, having a company with your best friend or someone, you always have some arguments, some negotiation phase of this company. So psychology, student psychology workers also play an active role in those cases. This is the hard job, I know. There are so many terms that I'm not familiar with, but I would say that also psychology is pretty much in this area as well. And thank you so much for all this information.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. And it's what is important here, how we think the management is taught here, is that the management sciences are having this psychological component. They are still staying as a management because the perspective is different and the focus is different. But what makes the management sciences really unique at this university is that this perspective of human sciences is very much present in our portfolio. It's all the syllabuses, even mine, like a strategic management. The clue of this is that you have to see the organization as the whole. You cannot really hire the IT manager if you do not have the idea about the job that this IT manager is doing. I mean, not only the idea, but the place in the organization where this manager is located, his products, his daily life. And this is, in HR recruitment, this is very important. But also in the project, in the proposal of the projects, it's when we are teaching the management and this hard management, the IT management, it's very important. It's because of the failure of the project that I just explained. It's very important that we are having the proper composition of the leaders. That is why our faculty is named, our program is named Leadership, Management and Leadership. But this management, the hard thing, is also very, very important. It simply cannot, you can apply the perspective of management, you can apply the perspective of psychology. And of course, you will have the manager at the end coming out from the managerial studies. You will have the psychologist coming out of the psychological studies. And the teaching scenario is different. And of course, the subjects are different. But what makes this faculty unique, I mean the management, the leadership and the management, is that we see the organization, the management of the organization as the whole thing. Yeah, thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Here in this faculty, here in this university, they teach us, you teach us how to make research, how to keep up with the news, what's going on in the world. And as you said, the words, the popular words in those conferences, the change, the psychologists also help how to adapt to the change, how to organize people for the change, how to help them prepare for it, and also, to kind of suit the crisis, I would say, or be prepared for the crisis. Also, the psychologists are very effective, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is also the main difference that you have pointed to between those two faculties. I mean, the psychological approach is more addressing the individual perspective. I mean, even if it is research of the group of people, it's still building on the individual characters. I'm not a psychologist, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I see that. And the faculty of management is having this high-level perspective and tasking the manager with having this look as the whole. This is why I presented at the case, the project, the main time-consuming task was to see how this corporation should look like. If we would apply the individual perspective, probably for the given manager, it would be easier to do the thing as he used to do in some other organization. So just collecting the data, reconciling this data, and then producing some report. But the manager is responsible for connecting all the items, all the strengths that are present in the organization. All the strengths which could be in people, which could be in the access to technologies, which could be in the in front of the competitors. So this is the approach that the university applies, that we want to see the organization and a manager in the organization seeing the organization as the whole consistent organism and understanding it to the very deep detail, like analyzing the DNA of this organization, but at the same way understanding the cosmos of this organization, the very high level view of this organization. Because only having those, as I started this lecture, only having the both perspectives, we are in position to advise the CEO sitting here in choosing the best solution and the best resources, human resources, other resources that could support implementing of those solutions. I would also, now having this bridge to the CEO, the question to the CEO, if you are satisfied with the concept that we're having here and what else we could do to improve the teaching in the way that you would be satisfied with recruiting of our students.
Okay, so from the, let's say, pure business perspective, it looks almost too good to be true, because, you know, if one could have a person that can predict the change, prepare and define the strategy to adapt to the change, and then, of course, review the changing environment on every step of the process and the project, that's a very comfortable situation, a very safe situation in any business development or business expansion, and that's something you're trying to prove that you're able to do in this university with the experience from your previous assignments and the very practical and pragmatic approach. So from this angle, you gave me some proof. At the same time, you know, these people also, if they comfortably navigate in the digital environment, which of course is the cross-connector of all the disciplines and organizational departments that for sure exist in my company, and I want to have them all involved in the development and the future, you know, in development of the business and increase of the business and changing the scope of the business. That would lead to almost, you know, a perfect setup. So, yeah, if this is true, you know, I could guys give you some credit in terms of sourcing for some potential candidates from this facility. Adding to that the element of psychological, let's say, preparation and approach that you also teach here, that my predecessor was discussing. And of course, we are not doing this in isolation. At the end, we are playing this game out there in the world, in the environment, meeting other people, and that's a human touch, and it's a human, let's say, interaction, where this psychological element plays a very fundamental role. So I think you deliver some pretty good substance for the businesses and for shaping them as well, because, you know, it starts with knowledge and theory, but then the practical side is also very important, and yeah, and with practice you learn. So thank you very much for this one. You know, it gave me some faith in that what I'm trying to do is okay.
Thank you very much. I really like what I'm hearing, and I receive it as another challenge that we need to keep on delivering the results, the tangible results that will make you more and more confident to look for the students out from our university to employ. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to the audience. Thank you.